I think I can say this pretty clearly right at the beginning of this video. Dear Disney, we're not interested in your neo-Marxism peddling.
Communist, Marxist, Leninist, what is the difference?
And let's start here. If many of the full-run projections for the latest film from Disney, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, I'm going to be kind right there.
You're being hyperbolic.
It's going to make somewhere between $400 and $450 million global by the time of its theatrical run. That's actually quite the paltry sum for a film that approaches $500 million. When you just look at the production budget, overruns, and marketing alone. They even had to march out one of their favorite shills over at Deadline, their head money shill at Deadline for domestic box office, and confirm that the actual budget for the film, prior to all those other expenses, was $329 million, a figure that many of us have been reporting for several weeks now. They also had to trot the same shill out there to say that the promotion and advertisement budget was just $100 million, and that number is simply not in line with reality. Do you recall how many times you saw the Indiana Jones 5 teaser trailer on this year's Super Bowl alone? Just add $7 million to the promotion price each time that came up during the Super Bowl alone. Of course, finishing under $500 million would mark another enormous loss for Disney this year, well, this calendar year alone. In many estimations, if it performs that poorly, it could actually lose between $200 and $300 million in its theatrical run. That would be absolutely catastrophic. Worse yet, it calls into question why Lucasfilm would need to remain an independent studio and not just rolled into the larger corporation indeed. The studio itself is a giant money pit that is still a blot of red ink on somebody's ledger, and it's always been that way. So Indiana Jones and the Diabolical Dissection is not a good movie, as I said in my review just a few days ago. It should have been called Generic Adventure Movie with Member Berries.
I don't get it.
And I'm not certain that that wouldn't have improved the box office numbers. Definitely wouldn't have hurt them. Of course, on this channel, it's all about the dollars and cents. So we need to get on with that, because believe it or not, that was just the intro for this video. Here we go. So returning to the summation, Indy 5, well, it's what you thought it would be. The rumors and the leaks that we got in the last couple of months were all true, and well, I wish that was a lie, but it's not. If you want to skip the movie, as I said in my review, I don't blame you. But at least we're going to look at just how much Disney has added to their negative theatrical earnings this year, sitting near $900 million, which has been reported widely now, courtesy of our friend Valiant Renegade and all of his new mainstream media friends, right? Just kidding, Valiant. And of course, Valiant is right. We all talk about the same kinds of things in our little sphere, but we're not even done with red ink for the year. It's going to get worse. And that's the biggest problem for Disney right now, is if this film actually finishes the weekend at the bottom of the tracking. What's funny is the dream of a $100 million 5-day weekend domestically, because they're rolling in the 4th of July holiday, that's just basically a pipe dream at this point. Let alone there are some dwindling international projections that, well, should be a wake-up call for everybody. Of course, adding to all of that is the fact that both Canada and France are on fire right now, for different reasons, and that's not exactly driving traffic to the box office. Hey Grant, how is this thing doing in Australia?
Does it matter?
It kind of does, mate.
I think what's worse here is that this film is eerily in line with the performance of The Flash, which was a catastrophic flop. It's not good by any measure. When you do a comparison on the numbers website, you can actually look at the chart, and they seem to be tracking neck and neck, although it could be argued that Flash is tracking slightly better. Expectations, of course, very early on were that this should actually be well above Little Mermaid, which remains firmly in flop territory at the moment. And instead, this film is actually having one of the Deadline number shills, taking Alka-Seltzer out of shock. Hey Grant, are you in shock?
No.
No?
Unsurprisingly, all of the shills are missing the point on this, as they always do, and they've been missing it for quite a while. People are done supporting the messaging. They're really done supporting Disney. Just that simple. Most people don't know what it's been that's been turning them off of all of these films, but That's entirely the reason. It's an observable phenomenon. If Kathleen Kennedy wanted to lose the older audience, which were clearly the only people that showed up, or a handful of them in these audience samples, well, here's the result. They're gone. And what's worse is that this film was actually set up from beginning to end for an older audience that would have wanted to see it. And to that end, studios have been driving audiences away from the box office for an easily observable period of time that you can point right to 2016 for. And it doesn't help that the political messaging and the indoctrination in the education system has stripped away creativity and imagination at, well, an alarming rate. You wonder why things aren't good, why nothing is creative in this post-modern world. Well, politics have invaded all of the institutions. So there you are. But let's return to the matter at hand. Audience apathy. What's stunning is when you compared the last good Indiana Jones movie, The Last Crusade, from all the way back in 1989. The number of butts and seats between that film was reduced by over half. We're going to do some quick back of the napkin math here, so ride along with me, shall we? In 1989, there were 21,632 indoor screens in the domestic market. The Last Crusade was able to open up on 2,327 of those screens and was able to maintain about that many theaters through the fifth weekend. After that, it kind of fell off a little bit, but still stayed in the theaters for quite some time. And there was, that year, a ton of competition. 1989 was one of the biggest film release years ever, and boy did we get some wonderful entertainment there. But let's compare it to today. Today, there are well over 38,000 theaters, and Dial of Destiny opened up on nearly twice as many screens, 4,600. And so now let's return to The Last Crusade, which actually grossed $46.9 million in its first weekend. Pretty good opening, right? That was all the way back in '89 with an average earning per theater of $15,914. The annual ticket price back then, believe it or not, was $3.99. From that point in history to now, ticket pricing has, well, skyrocketed even in comparison to inflation. So doing some quick math of $3.99 as an average ticket price, it means that The Last Crusade drew about 11,754,385 people to theaters on that given weekend, the first weekend of its run. Now here's where we're going to get very depressing for Disney, well, and some other studios as well. You see, current ticket price averages are between $11 and $12 domestically. Whew. For our purposes, I'm going to be kind and I'm going to say, well, let's just give it the $11 average. Now, I'm going to take the largest estimated weekend number as well to be kind to dear old Disney, although I think the film will actually underperform the 3-day that was earlier advertised. So we're going to give him the $60 million opening weekend and divide it by $11, and voila. A mere 5,454,000 people went to the theater to see this movie. That's right. It's less than half of the number of people that went to see The Last Crusade all the way back in 1989. Congratulations, studios. You pull in less than half of the folks that you used to. Is it worth it? Is the messaging actually worth it? Scarier question here. Do your investors know? They should. Hopefully they're watching here right now. Do they know that a film production budget way back in 1989 was $48 million? Last Crusade spent that much money and legged out $474 million global. With both of those numbers adjusted for inflation, that film would have cost $118 million to make and $1.16 billion it would have grossed at the box office. That's a lot. Are your investors aware of how irresponsible that you've been with their investment in service of your neo-Marxist heel turn, your anti-family messaging, your identitarian hand clapping? They should be made aware. That's why I'm here. That's why a lot of people are here now, pointing the finger at the real problem that's going on all around us right now. You see, Disney, you spent over $300 million in production budget alone, $329 million to be exact. Now, standard advertising and promotion would put the film's overall cost well over $450 million. And I'm going to be kind here, and I say maybe that's what you spent. That's the barest minimum, but Even with that, you would have to make $840 million just to sniff break even. And all of that is based on a 50-50 split, which, as we know, sometimes doesn't work out that way. What's worse is that we know that that's not close to break even, because that's not how much that was spent on this film. We know there are many other expenses that are being hidden here until next year. And there's also interest expenses and some last minute reshoot costs and a lot of things that are still undisclosed. We also know that come next quarterly call, you won't exactly be questioned by any of the institutional investors on any of the things that I've brought up. Will you, Disney? Why? Well, I think everybody here knows that it's because the financial game that you are all playing in, you're all serving the same masters, and they haven't been serving their customers' best interests in a very long time, just as you haven't. Right, Disney? The good news for us and the bad news for Disney is that the red ink is going to continue to spell all the way through the end of the year. There are still a lot of Disney films left to come out, and almost all of them are pretty much guaranteed to be flops. And many of these films you've never even heard of, like Haunted Mansion. That's right, they remade that film again, and it looks even worse than the last time that they tried to drop film about this attraction. Then you're going to get served up The Marvels, which I'm sure somehow is going to overcome all the bad that's been associated with it right from the beginning, right? Right after Marvels, and almost nobody has heard about it. Nobody. It's not advertised. And finally, there's supposed to be some kind of a Christmas movie coming out that's called Dashing Through the Snow. In fact, it surprises me that Disney would want to tackle anything as joyful as Christmas. Well, perhaps they're out to destroy Christmas as well. Would that surprise any of you? In other words, in this calendar year, Disney will not have created a slate of films that produces a profit. In fact, it's a slate that could lose over $1.3 billion at the box office by the end of the calendar year. Yikes. For now, there are going to be many, me included, that are just going to revel in the fact that Disney and these other corrupted groups and studios are stuck with what they've got, and their future looks dismal indeed, especially when they bend over the barrel on the stakeholder culture that they've adopted, leading to more and more expenditures on things that are antithetical to profit. One last note, if you think that Disney or any studio-owned streaming service actually makes the company money by having them place their own film on their own streaming service, I have some Louisiana swampland to sell you. In fact, just for fun, I invite you to take a crispy $1 bill. I want you to put that in your left pocket. Okay? Now, wait a few seconds and then put it over on your right pocket. Okay? Did you notice that you do not all of a sudden have more money? There you go. Look, I've said a lot here about Indy being a flop. I've done it for a few days now. I've done it on a lot of live streams, but I'm actually curious as to what you think. Is Indy just another in a long line of losers for Disney? Will something actually find profit before the end of the year? Do you have a different take on anything that I haven't considered? Because it's quite possible, although I do try to look at this from a lot of different angles. I'm game to chat about it if you are, so hit me up in the comment section down below. Also, if this is your first time and you've made it all the way through this video, thank you. If it's your 1000th time, to hit the subscribe button, because I'm gunning for 10K by the end of the summer. I'd like to hit it by the middle of July, but I would love for you to be here regularly so that we can talk about business side pop culture news, entertainment news, etc., etc. And once more, I just want to say thank you. You guys have really made things happen on the channel, and I'm getting a lot more views. So if you wouldn't mind, with a few comments, of course, as I mentioned before, hitting the like and sharing the video, that'll help immensely. And with that, be sure to take care of yourself, take care of others, wash your hands, of course, because it's good hygiene. And until next time, bye.